think schools certainly think about what they're doing to teach kids and prepare them for life during those normal school hours, sort of in those strict education blocks. But it seems to me that they don't really think about, especially things like child safety and protection in the after hours when students are still on school property and schools are still liable for things that might happen to them there. But I think they think their work day is in effect done when it's really not.
The after-school programming is generally a collaboration between the PTA and the principal. So if you had a PTA president and a principal sitting in front of you, what would be some quick ideas and guidelines you might provide them?
Well, I'd want to know whether or not they're training their school personnel, both during school and especially after school, to recognize the signs of grooming. So do they know what those signs look like? Do they know that there's a difference, for example, between preferential and situational sex offenders? Are they aware that 30% of students, and that's even starting in middle school, admit that they have engaged in sexting behavior, that is sending illicit and illegal images of themselves to other students? Are they aware that grooming is a constellation of behaviors and that there are some children that are more vulnerable than others to becoming victims of a sexual predator? Those are some of the things I would ask them, whether or not they already have a regime in place to understand those things, to train their personnel on them so that they can more fully protect children on their property.
And in your opinion and your experience, what is the general reaction when you have these conversations?
Well, it's the reaction I guarantee you anyone watching this has just had when I said the word sexual predator, situational offender, sexting, or grooming. They all got very uncomfortable. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to believe, that it happens. But I get Google alerts. I see literally every day all over the world children being sexually exploited by school staff, school personnel, and of course a lot of other people. But it's a shocking problem that I think people would rather close their eyes to because it's uncomfortable and it's hard.
So if you have the conversation and people get over kind of this shock and awe of what you're saying, once they get to that point, what are some resources they can turn to, people they can turn to really be aware and be smart?
It's one of the most difficult problems, I think, that I hear from schools that I talk to around the world, and that is there is no one place. We had a hard time finding you, they tell me. I was in a school in Central America recently. They had an allegation of misconduct and were unhappy, I think, with law enforcement's reaction and asked me to come down and assess the danger to their students myself. And one of the things they said was, we tried to find a single place where we could go for resources on things like grooming or which children might be vulnerable or safety tips and red flags, and there really isn't one place. And so I think that is the hardest thing, is that there isn't one place. There are all kinds of child advocacy groups, but they're all different and they're all distinct. And so I think it's hard to find that one resource. Frankly, that one resource doesn't really exist unless you come to a person like me who's got that sort of training and background, understanding of how things work, and contacts in the law enforcement community, and can bring in people to do that training.
Oh, perfect segue. How can schools get in touch with you if they have these questions or God forbid, run into something that they really need your help?
Well, of course, they can contact me. I blog regularly at franceyhakes.wordpress.com, and all my contact information, my Gmail address, and everything is there. And I'm more than happy to talk to anyone at any time and further advise them, either come and do training myself if that's what they want, or help them get into touch with some local, federal, state officials that might be able to help them.
Well, thank you very much for all your information and for all you're doing. We really appreciate it.
I'm happy to do it. I'd like to do my part to help keep all kids safe.